actually like the new year. I like changing the new year. And the reason I like changing the new year is because for whatever reason, as I've gotten old, I get more sentimental. And so now all of a sudden it's like another year's gone, and I take time and I think about the last year and like, wow, look what happened that year. And then I start looking ahead, and hopefully I get a little excited. I'm like, man, what's going to happen this year? The other thing I do, because, unlike the way I obviously look, I may not be the most on top of popular culture. I may not be the most hip person in the world. I know you can't believe it. I know you think this guy has got to be one of the coolest cats around, but I don't always pay attention to what's going on. So I love it when things come out like a list of the best of 2017. Do you guys ever look up those best of 2017 lists? And the reason is because I saw this best movies of 2017. I hadn't seen any of them. So then it's like, oh, I better see those movies. So I looked up, what are the top songs played on Spotify in 2017. All right, you want to guess what is the top song on Spotify 2017? Who wants to guess? You got to yell it out. Despacito? What is that? Band's Not Hot? See, I don't even know these things. That's why I have to look at these lists. Anybody else? Somebody back here? All right. The number one most played song on Spotify, according to whatever list I looked at, is Shape of You by Ed Sheeran. The number 2 and number 3 song, because the number 2 song is a remix of the number 3 song, is Despacito. There you go. Now, how about this? Top grossing movie, this is about an easier one, of 2017. Beauty and the Beast is one. Star Wars. Anybody else? Number 1 was Star Wars. That was kind of an easy one. The second one was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And then Beauty and the Beast. You weren't too far off. Number 3. All right, so tonight we're going to look at kind of a top 10 list, we're only going to give 9. The top 9 list. But before we get there, we have to understand why we're going to look at this top list later on. And to get there, I want to look at one particular verse. Now, if you've been at Sanctuary for a while, there are some people here who've been here like more than 10 years. I won't make you raise your hand, but there are some people in this room. And I was leading Sanctuary for about the last 10 years, till about a year ago. And there was probably one verse I mentioned more than any other verse from this stage. One verse that I mentioned, tons of it. We talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite verses. And a few weeks ago, I was reading this verse and kind of thinking about this. And a part of this verse jumped out at me that I kind of had barely paid attention to before. Most of the time I paid attention to the first half rather than the second half of this verse. That's one of the cool things about the Bible. Just a little aside here. We believe that the Bible is not just a good book, but it's actually the inspired Word of God. And one of the amazing things is you can have a verse that, I probably read this verse hundreds of times, and yet God can bring something new out of it that kind of blows you away. And that's what happened to me, and that's what I want to share with you tonight. Now the verse, it's been up on the screen for a while, so you've seen it there, is Ephesians 2:10. Ephesians 2:10, for we are what He's made us, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand to be our way of life. This is actually a different version of it than I usually say, and I chose that because of some of the words that it uses. But this is the verse, again, and oftentimes I spend a lot of time talking about the first half of this verse, which says, For we are what He made us. A lot of versions say, for we are God's handiwork. All right, and the Greek word for handiwork is a word called poema. We've talked about poema. If you've been around Sanctuary, if you've not, I'm going to introduce it to you. So this word poema means workmanship. It sounds like the word poem. It basically means a work of art. The first part of this verse says, we are a work of art created by God. Now, this is important for a couple reasons. One is, most of the time, we don't feel like a work of art. If we're honest, most of us probably feel like we were kind of made from leftovers. Where a lot of times we look at someone else and like, man, they're way better looking than I am. Like God made them with all the good looking parts, and then he had like a leftover double chin and he gave it to Josh. Right? And then we look at like personality, we're like, man, that person, they're just funny. Like when they're at a party and they say something, everyone laughs. I say something, people just kind of walk away because they don't want to talk to me. Like he gave them the good personality and I got the leftover parts. Like smarts, we're like, man, this person, they got like a 1,600 on the SAT and I didn't even get 1,000. Like what? Like he gave them all the good brains and then like there were some leftover brains in a pile and God was like, all right, well, I got to do something with them. I'll give them to Ron. Sorry, I like to pick on Ron. He sits in the front row here. It's a lot of fun to pick on Ron. I mean, we do. We feel like we got the leftover parts. But this verse says the exact opposite. It says that every single one of us is a work of art. And if you don't feel that way, if you don't feel like you're a work of art, if you feel like leftover parts, if you feel like, hey, there's I just don't have things right, I don't have things together, God made a mistake when he made me. If you feel that way, that is a lie. That is false. When we talk about that a lot here, because the truth is many of us feel that way. The second reason the first part of this verse is so important is that not only are you a work of art, but every single person in the entire universe is a work of art. And the truth is we don't act that way. We don't act like every single person in the universe is a work of art. We act like, well, there's that person, and they're really annoying. They are really annoying. They're needy. They call me. They text me. Their number shows up on my phone, and I'm like, denied. I mean, I don't want to talk to that person. We often do not treat everyone like they are a work of art created by God. But the truth is, every single one of us is a work of art created by God. If we don't believe it about ourselves, we need to change that mindset. If we look around and when we look around at people, we're like, oh, this person, okay, that's a good person, that's not a good person. No. We should treat every single person like they are a work of art created by God. So that's what I talk about a lot. That's what we talk about a lot here at Sanctuary. It is a powerful point. It is a powerful thing. It will change the way you see yourself, change the way you see the world. But tonight, we're not going to talk about that. Tonight, we're going to focus on the second half of this verse, which if I'm honest, I really spent not that much time on. I've talked many, many times about the first part of that verse, which is so powerful. But the second half of this verse says some extremely important things. One of the first things it says is that we were created for good works, which God prepared beforehand. We were created for good works. So every single one of us is a work of art. Every single one of us, God designed. He designed us a certain way. He said, hey, I'm going to make you with this personality. I'm going to make you look this way. I'm going to make you talk this way because I want you to look that way. And here's why I want you to look and act and think and feel that way, because I have a plan for you. I have things that I have planned for you that I've already prepared for you. That's pretty amazing to think that God has things already prepared for you. We were created to be a part of what God's doing, and He has it prepared for us. Now, this should both make us excited and should relieve some of the stress. The truth is, I know a lot of us here in church, we want to do good things. Most of the people I talk to want to do good stuff. This says we are created to do good works. Maybe you know some people who are just pure evil people who do lots of bad things, like a villain in a superhero movie. Like villains in superhero movies, like they just always want to do bad things. Like who's the really bad guy in Star Wars? Like the guy, not with the messed up face and.
No, he's good. No. Misunderstood people.
So, right, there are people in this world that are bad people. But for the most part, the people I meet, the people I run into every day, want to do good. People want to do the right thing. They want to do good things, but sometimes they struggle with it. And I know people in church that really get stressed out because they're like, I have to do good stuff. And so they kind of push themselves and get stressed out every day. They walk around their school, they walk around work, and they're like, all right, what am I going to, how do I do what, I want to follow God? And there are some people who get really kind of scared that they're going to mess up God's plan. Like if I pick this job, if I pick this school to go to, if I don't talk to this person, if I don't marry this person, I'm going to mess up God's plan. And we get really frustrated, like I'm going to mess up. In case you're wondering, God's bigger than you are. We don't have to be so stressed out that we're going to mess up God's plan. You know what we can do is we can look and be more aware of what God's plan might be, because God is already planning things. And what often happens is we try to put our plans on God. And so maybe we have this person, we're like, God, this person really needs to come to church. And so we pray, which is a great thing. Pray about it. And God's like, well, what about this other person who keeps talking to you, that annoying person that you don't want to talk to? This actually happened to me. Don't tell this person that they're an annoying person. They're not here because they come to the morning service, just so you know. But my wife and I, when we had little kids, we lived kind of over the street, and when you have little kids, if you're in your house, and we lived in a little tiny apartment, they drive you nuts because they're literally like bouncing off the wall. I don't mean like just kind of, I don't mean figuratively, I mean literally jumping off the wall, right? Because you got these little kids. And so almost every night we would walk across the street to this playground and say, kids, go play while we can sit here and ignore you. I'm really making having kids sound great. You guys can welcome Rob back next week, who had his first kid a couple weeks ago. But we'd walk to this playground, and there was a couple there that were a unique couple. Very nice. But I have to be honest, they wouldn't have been the people I would have picked to be friends with because they were a little odd. And when I say that, what I mean is usually when you call someone odd, it means they're different than you. Now, we often say odd because you're different from me and I must be up here and you're down here. That's not the way it was, but that's the way I saw it in my head. All right, we talked about it. Pauline mentioned in their prayer, this is like Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, which kind of fits with that, right? Because we often go, oh man, this person's odd or this person's different. And because of that, we're like, well, I'm up here and they're down here. And in my head, I would have put this couple who had a daughter the same age as my daughter and a son the same age as my son, so you couldn't help but talk to them because our kids were playing together. So we had to go and talk with them because, they're there and we're there and we've got kids, and so we did, and it was a little awkward because, well, they're odd. But then we started talking a little bit, and we spent some time together, and one day they found out what I did. I work here at this church, Black Rock Church, and that means I have to be nice to them. And so one day I was in here in the office and I got a call from the receptionist and they said, there's someone here to see you. I walk out, they just came to the church. Like out of the blue, this couple just walks in. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can show you around the church. Well, since that time, that guy, if you come to the 8:30 service here, the first service, and check your kids in, he'll check your kids in. His name's Vinny Madragano. He's a great guy. He has one of the best hearts, one of the most servant-hearted guys I know. Now, if I was going on my plan of to say, hey, God, all right, here's my plan. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to have someone who's a lot like me. I like basketball. I like pretty much any sports. So can you bring someone that would talk to me about that? Can you bring someone who, maybe has a lot of schooling? I went to school a lot. I can talk, endlessly about theology. Oh, no, you can bring Vinny. He works at a roofing company. That doesn't fit with me. That's not my plan, God. Often, God has things prepared for us that we don't see, and the reason we don't see them is because we're looking somewhere else. We have our own plan. We say, all right, God, you have to work in this person's life, and you have to do this, and you have to do this for me, and if you don't do that, this says no. First of all, step back a little bit. Take the pressure off yourself. It's not all about you and you trying to force your agenda on this. God's got a plan for us. And to be honest, my story with Vinny, I wasn't even doing this very well. God just kind of forced it on me. He was like, bam, you're going to do this. You're going to pay attention to my plan, which is bigger than your plan. That's the way God works. And the other thing about this is it should get us excited. It should get us excited that God has a plan for you. When I think about 2018, I go, I wonder what God's plan is going to be. Right? There's like this excitement. Literally every day this year, you can get up and go, God's got some sort of plan. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but God's got a plan. And if you, again, think in your head, all right, well, God uses some people. Like there's like missionaries and like wearing like helmets or something in Africa or something like that, or, going to the Middle East, something like that. God uses those people. But me, at my school, at my workplace, in my family, like God doesn't know my family because there's no way God's working there. Like if you know my family, like that's the way we think. That's not really true. That's what we think. We think God's not working in my family. They're way too messed up. God's not working at my school. They're not. That's not true at all. God is working and he has a plan. And every moment of every day, we can get up and go, what's it going to be today, God? And which leads to the last part of this verse. The last part of this verse says, hey, this idea that God created us, we're a work of art, and that he has plans set out for us, this should be a way of life. To be our way of life. Which I love as well because, it can say, all right, God's prepared some good works for us. And that makes it sound like when we say that, the way we use the word good works, it makes it sound like, all right, God's made a plan where you should go and serve food at a soup kitchen one day. Like, I will do a good work. Or I'll go help an old lady across the street. Hey, God prepared this good work. I helped the old lady across the street. That was my good work for the day. I'm done. I'm out. That's not what it says here. It says this is a way of life. The way of life is understanding I'm a work of art created by God. God's preparing stuff for me to do. And my entire way of life is I walk around every day aware that God's working and just trying to figure out, okay, God, what do you got for me today? Okay, God, what do you got for me today? It may be something huge. Maybe one of you is going to cure cancer tomorrow. That would be awesome. Please do that. Or it may be something small where it's like, all right, God, I smiled at this person who seemed to need a smile today. But God is preparing things every single day. It's just a way of life. And to be honest, it's a much more exciting and a little bit less stressful way of life. Because we're not trying to force God into places. We're just looking for what God's already doing. And say, hey, so if that's the case, if we actually want to do good, I'm going to guess that I'm going to say 100% of the people in this room tonight want to do good stuff tomorrow. Pretty much 100% of you. If anyone's in here is like, no, I'd like to be evil tomorrow, I'm asking you, please leave. Right? That's not, you wouldn't come here if that was your idea. Right? Every single person in this room goes, yeah, I'd like to do something good tomorrow. So, how do we do it? How do we become more aware of what God's doing? The truth is, it's not necessarily rocket science. A lot of it is just kind of paying attention. So I'm going to go through 9 ways that we can be more aware. This is not a top 10 list. This is just 9 things. I got 9 verses that really talk about kind of being aware. And it's kind of like, hey, if I look at this verse and see what it says, if I try to institute that, you may not remember any of these. You're free to just take 1 or 2 or 9 and go, maybe I could do that tomorrow. But these are just ways to be a little more aware because God's working and our job is simply to be aware. So one of the first ways to be more aware of what God is doing is what I call look sideways. Here's what that means. We spend a lot of time looking forward and looking backward and less time looking right where we are. There's a lot of us that go, yes, I would like to be aware of what's going on. I'd like to do good works for God, but first I need to finish school. Well, first I need to get into a good college. Well, first I need to do good and get in college so I get a good job. Well, then I need to get a promotion at my job because then finally I'll be able to do that. And then I'm working so hard, and then maybe when I retire, I'll be able to do stuff for God. We don't say that out loud, but that's how we think often. We think like that. We think, okay, some point in the future. Some of us, it's about ourselves. We're like, well, I'm not quite ready now. Do you know when Jesus was around, he basically went to some people who were pretty much sinners, a tax collector, a guy named Matthew, who everyone hated because he cheated people out of money, and he was like, hey, Matthew, why don't you come follow me? And then he didn't give Matthew like a 10-step leadership course. It was like, all right, day one, you're following Jesus, and you're doing some good stuff for Jesus. That's pretty much how it works. Some of us are like, okay, I'll do some good stuff for God, but first I have to get this right in my life, and I have to get this right in my life, and I have to fix this out. That's some of the looking back, too, right? We look back, and we're like, well, I got all these things. I got this baggage I'm carrying. I've got this stuff. I mean, even the stuff I did in the past that's really bothering me right now. Yeah, we got that. We should be continuing to work on that. We can clean up some of the stuff in our past, but cleaning up stuff in the past doesn't exclude us living for God right now. So number one is just look sideways. Right? Look for where you are right now. Because so often we miss what's going on right now because we're either looking forward or looking back. The verse, great verse there on the screen. It says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. I love this last part. Making the most of every opportunity. Making the most of every opportunity. Paying attention to where I am. Not missing it because I'm looking ahead. Not missing it because I'm looking behind. Not missing it because I'm distracted, but looking sideways. Another way that we be more aware of who God is. Open up. Open up. If you close off to other people, you end up closing off to God. It's just the way it works. Opening up means being a little more vulnerable about where I am in life. Being a little vulnerable with other people. I have a phrase that I say. It says, you don't have to tell everybody your junk, but you got to tell somebody. You don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to go around, hey, yeah, I'm Josh, and I'm really messed up. But you got to tell some people. And oftentimes, if we don't open up, it sort of limits us. It limits us from moving on, from moving forward. If you don't have a community of people, Sanctuary pushes so hard to get involved in community. We talk about it all the time. That's the entire reason we're doing this group link thing after the service. If you are not regularly getting together with a group of people who talk about your faith and talk about how to live in this world, you will struggle. And that's why we tell you, you've got to get involved in a community somewhere. Maybe you have some. Maybe you have a great community. If so, you know what you need to do? Invite someone in. Invite someone else in. Because we need that. You need that place where you can get involved in a community of people who support you, who you can be honest with. It's huge for being aware of what God is doing in you. Because if you don't have that, you often aren't aware. Now, being involved in community can be a little messy. One of my favorite books, those people who we do a leadership thing every so often called Lead. We're not doing it right now. We'll do it next. If you see it pop up, you should sign up for it. We read chapters from a book called Everyone's Normal Until You Get to Know Them. Great title for a book. Everyone's normal until you get to know them. And they have a chapter in this book that talks about what it's like to be in community, and they call it the porcupine dance. And the reason they call it that is porcupines, as you know, have quills. I won't get too graphic for you, but porcupines do mate, okay? Just put those two ideas together for a minute. Quills, mating. They have to do it in a way that they don't poke each other. Bad choice of words. When you do get involved in community, sometimes your quills hit each other. But it's worth it because that's how you grow. That's how you mature. That's all. Sometimes it's your own fault. You do some stuff, you're in community, you hurt someone, they come to you, they hurt you, you ask for forgiveness, you move forward. That's what community is meant to be. It's meant to be people who are supporting each other, encouraging each other. You've got to open up. Number 3, see good as God. See good as God. The great verse up there. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father. Every good and perfect gift is from above. Do you know that every single good thing in this world comes from God? Every single good thing in the world. If you see something good, you should automatically see God. If you taste a piece of food and it's the best piece of food you've ever eaten, or even just a halfway decent piece of food, you should be like, wow, that's good food, God. Every single good thing you see in the world comes from God. And so often we miss that. Right? We just think, oh, that was a good thing. Oh, that was nice. Everything that's good comes from God. Going on our top 10 theme. Do you know what the number one watched YouTube video of 2017 was? Anyone? Shout it out if you think. Cat video, that's a good guess, you know. Anything? The what? Sorry, I couldn't hear it. Try not to laugh. Some kind of music video. Music video was on their top. 211 million people watched this video. It is the number one watched YouTube video of 2017. Take a look. I kid you not. That is the number one watched YouTube video from a television show called The Masked Singer, where some guy is dressed like an oyster singing some song. And the people love it. They're all excited. I don't know if that's good, but the guy's got a good voice. We can even see that. If you look at that, somehow there's good in that. To be honest, there is good in everything. There is some sort of good in every single thing, even something as bizarre as that. So whenever we see good, whether it's an oyster singing a song, we can be like, man, I saw good in that. I saw God in that. I might have saw the devil in that too, but I don't know. But at least there was some good in there. Every time we see good, we should see God. Number 4, do something. Do something to serve others. We actually have a brochure that lists ways to serve here at Sanctuary. You know what it's called? Do something. It's called do something. The truth is, oftentimes we don't necessarily see God. We're not aware of what's God doing because we're kind of sitting back and waiting. We're like waiting, like, all right, God, if you like jump right in front of me and tell me, hey, Josh, go do this right now, I'll do it. But until then, I'll sit down and watch YouTube videos. You will not be aware of what God is doing if you are waiting for this billboard of God to say, here's what I'm doing. Because God often shows up when we start moving. God often shows up when we start moving. We're already moving. And one of the ways that we move is often serving. Whether it's inside the church, outside the church. If you're serving in some area, you often see God moving there. But where you don't see God moving is where you're not doing anything. Do something. Great verse there. Matthew 10:45 says, he will reply, meaning God will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you do for one of the least of these, you did for me. Basically, that's what God's saying. Hey, if you did something to serve someone else, you did it for me. Serving other people is serving God. And you'll see it as you do it. Do something. Number 5, pay attention, especially to beauty. This goes along a lot with see good as God. But I often find we miss beauty in the world, often because we're so distracted by other things. The other day, I was taking my 2 oldest kids to the bus stop. We live about a quarter mile from the bus stop, and for some reason, when it's like below 0, they won't walk to the bus stop. I don't know what's wrong with them. So often, I give them a ride to the bus stop. Their bus, the first bus, my kids' high school bus, comes at 6:50 in the morning. 6:50 in the morning, they have to catch the bus. So I drive them up to the bus stop. A couple weeks ago, we drove them up to the bus stop. It was pitch black. It's not really fun driving to the bus stop in pitch black. The other day, we drove to the bus stop, 6:50 in the morning. I'm never really that happy. It's often a very quiet ride, quarter mile, 2 high school age kids and a grumpy dad at 6:50 in the morning. We get up to the bus stop. It's freezing cold outside. And you know what's happening? There's a sunrise. Like the sun is rising right over the trees. And so I said, hey, kids, look at the sunrise. And they're, But anyway, I literally, in that moment, I missed that. Now, most days, I don't even notice. The sun's rising. I'm thinking it's 6:50 in the morning. I get to get the kids to the bus. I get to get home. I got all this stuff I have to do today. I completely miss it. The vast majority of beauty in the world we miss. We don't even see it. We don't even notice it. We're going through life and we got other things on our mind. We got places to be, things to get done. God created this world with so much beauty. Another great verse. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. This says in the beauty around us, we can actually see things like God's eternal qualities. That's visible in the beauty of around us. God's divine nature. His eternal power is just seen and we miss it. We miss it every day. But it's there if we're willing to be aware of it. Number 6, go away. Not right now, but at some point in your life, at some point in your day, go away. Jesus did this. It's up on the screen. Very early in the morning, he went away. He got some time. Go find solitude. Solitude means you spend time in complete quiet. That is very difficult to do. Try it this week. Spend 30 minutes even, an hour. No music, no cell phone, no YouTube, nothing, in complete silence. It often scares us. It makes us uncomfortable. Partly because sometimes things come to our mind. Things come up in our lives, things that we've been trying to ignore. God brings things to us. Why? Because we're actually slowing down and getting away. I don't care if it's 30 minutes or a week or a day. Spend time away from your routine. Spend time in quiet. I guarantee you, you will be more aware of who God is in that time in solitude than probably the rest of that day. Number 7, write it down. Write it down. In this psalm, David says, trust in God at all times. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. King David is one of the most manly guys I know. He killed bears. He killed lions. It once says that he actually went and collected 200 foreskins. Let's not get into that, but you can look it up if you'd like to. This dude was like, at one point it says that they used to sing this song that Saul, who was the king of the time, killed thousands, and David killed 10,000s of men. This dude was the manliest man you can think of, and yet he played the harp, wrote poetry, and kept a diary. All right? And he was a dancer. There we go. He danced in his underwear even. It's true. Write it down. The reason I say write it down is often as we write it down, 2 things happen. One, when you write something down, it helps you remember it. It literally helps you remember what you wrote down. And 2, it actually is a time where you can spend some time actually putting down on paper some of the thoughts. If you spend time writing your prayers, if you spend time writing things down, as you write them down, you will become more aware of who God is. I'm going to ask the band to come back up before we got a couple more to go that we're going to go through quickly, because we got a couple more songs that we're going to sing, and we're going to shout it out when we do. Number 8 says, go the extra mile. One of the ways that we become more aware of who God is when we actually go the extra mile with a person. Great verse up there. Great verse. It says, and if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. One of the reasons we're often not aware of God is because sometimes we're guarded. People want us to help them. We're like, no, hold on. This says, you know what? If somebody needs help, go for it. Give them your shirt, give them your coat, just serve them however you want. And then you will actually begin to be more aware of who God is. Because when we kind of spend that time guarding, you're like, all right, well, I can help you maybe a little bit, but if I can't help you too much, because when that happens, it's kind of a barrier between us and God. Go the extra mile to serve people, to do things in a way with excellence. And number nine says, embrace adversity. Do you know most of the times when you grow the most? When you go through tough times. And yet many of us, when we go through tough times, we think, oh, God must not be there. God wouldn't want me to go through rough times. God wouldn't want me for things to be a little tough in my life. God wouldn't want any friction or anything like that. Well, you know what? Sometimes God actually allows you to go through things. Sometimes you make dumb choices on your own and you learn things by going through those rough times. But one of the greatest ways that we can be aware of who God is when we're going through a rough time to step back and say, okay, God, help me out. Because when things are going well, we just kind of say, all right, God, I'm doing good. I'm a good person. I can do great. And when things are going rough, we're like, okay, God, I need your help. I need your help, and so I need you. So when things are going rough, there's a great verse. It says right there, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. Wouldn't that be nice to be mature and complete? I'm waiting for that day. I'm waiting for that day. For most of us, probably won't happen until we get to heaven, but we get to take steps along the way. As you look forward to this year, as you look forward to 2018, know without a shadow of a doubt, you are a work of art created for God. And He has things planned for you. I mean, they're already planned. He's got these ideas planned. He's got your Vinny that you're going to meet on the playground. He's got things planned for you where you're going to be able to make a difference in this world. There's things that you're going to do, ways you're going to understand yourself better this year. Things are going to happen, and it's going to change your character in a way to make you closer to God. It's going to happen because it's planned. Our job is simply go, all right, God, what you doing today? We don't have to force it. We don't have to try to worry about we just have to walk through life being more aware of what God's doing. And God says, oh, that's all you got to do. And if you do that, when you look back, when we get to January 14th of 2019, you'll look back on 2018 and go, man, that was a pretty cool year because of what God did in me and through me. Let's pray. God, we do thank you. You love us so much. You care about us so deeply. I mean, we can't even imagine how much you care about us. And you've got a plan for us. You got a plan for us in 2018. I pray that you'd help us be aware, be more aware of what you're doing around us every day. Be excited about what we get to be a part of. Guide us this year. In Jesus' name, amen.